So let's create a model, and the model will be for song. So each song will have several properties, and that's gonna be in our model. So I'm going to add a new class to our models folder, and I'll call it song. And since we now have a model in the folder, when I go to home controller, you can see the error is gone. Now our models can be used. Alright, so what do we need when we create a song? Well, first thing we need, since we are working with database, we need an ID for the song. So let's create a property ID, and that can be an integer, and I'll call it song ID. Next property we need is the name of the song, and this one needs to be required because we cannot really have a song without a name. So I'll use the attribute required, and I'll specify my own error message, and that can be simply say, please enter a song's name. And the property that this is for is a string, and I'll simply call it name. Now the ID is of course required too. However, when the user creates a new song, the user does not enter an ID. The ID will be generated by the entity framework. Next, we can have the release date for the song, and we can make that required as well. So again, it's gonna be required with custom error message, and we can simply ask the user to enter a year. And we can do a little bit of input validation. So we will set the range for the year to be, let's say, from 1900, and the error message can simply say that the year must be between 1900 and 2021. So let's create a property for the year. Let's make it an integer, and I'll call it year. Now remember, this is an integer, so we need to make this nullable if we want to use our custom error messages if the user does not provide any year at all. So I'll use the question mark there. Now the song name is required as well, however that is a string, so that by default is nullable. But an integer, we need to specify that this can be a null, and if that's the case, we will have our own custom message displayed. Next, we can do a rating of the song, and let's make this one required as well with a custom error message, and we will simply ask the user to enter the rating. And we can limit the range of the rating to be between 1 and 5, so 1 star up to 5 stars. So let's do the range, and again we'll have the minimum, which is 1, maximum is 5, and if the user enters the wrong one, we'll simply say that the rating must be between 1 and 5. So let's create a property for it, and it's gonna be an integer. I'll call it rating, and just like before when we have the year, since this is an integer, we need to make it nullable in order to display our error message. And this is enough for us. So right now, these are the properties that we need for our song, and next let's start working on the DB context to connect to the entity framework.